Hello, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today we're looking at a second submission by Jannette with her horse Holly. Today we're going to look at some lunge work. Holly is quite a heavy horse, as we see here. And I love the way you're starting out. Just be careful of those hind quarters there a little bit, and you get the horse moving away from you. I like how you're starting without any side reins or anything, just letting the horse get active and walking and swinging. That's the way we'd like to do. We'd ultimately like to be able to lunge them with no side reins at all if we can get to that point, which many of them we can, but some of them it takes quite a while, and I would imagine with this one it's going to. But you're at least getting a good walk out of this horse. For as heavy of the type of horse that this is, that's really quite a good walk. And the more she stretches, the better it looks. I've seen the entire video, of course, and I like where you get to by the end of this. So this is really good work for this type of horse. You know, once again, you've got to look at every horse individually. You can't say, oh, well, you know, this horse isn't moving active enough. Well, you know, it's the type of horse that it is. It's, you know, she's fairly straight behind and a pretty heavy type of horse. So it's going to take some work to get her stretching out and get those hind legs active. But this looks better. At least she's picking them up and putting them down, so to speak. And once again, I like how you're starting without any kind of side reins or anything and just letting the horse get walking forward, and she's starting to stretch quite nicely, which is a good thing. So this is all very good. I like how you're starting here. I like how you're keeping the line, keeping the horse out away from you on the line. You're staying in the right place. That is, you're staying at the apex of a triangle formed by your line and by your whip. Exactly where you should be. You're stepping forward with the horse. That's exactly what you should be doing. So you're always stepping forward towards the horse. So the horse is always yielding away from us, which is the most basic element of training, that the horse yield to us. You know, there's some people that are into this thing where they want horses to come at them and be all over them. Well, that's really not the thing to do. We want the horse to stay away from us. And if you ever watch how horses work each other, either a dominant horse, you know, in a field, or how a stallion will work a herd. And that's what they do, is they drive them forward. You know, they come up and they bite them right up above the hocks, which is why it's so natural to use your whip in that same place. That's how horses do to each other when they want them to move someplace. So if you ever see a stallion move a herd, they'll come up behind him and give him little nips there to keep them moving to where they want them to go. But they never make them stand still, which is, you know, something to understand about why, you know, standing still is the last thing we ever worry about when we work young horses, because it's a very unnatural thing for them to do. So we wait quite a while. Now, obviously, with a horse like this that you're working, I'm sure she'd have no problem standing still. But with a more fractious and energetic youngster, we have to be very careful of that. That is, asking them to be too still. Don't worry about that in the beginning. But this is good. You're getting this horse swinging. I like everything that's happening here with its walk. For the type of horse this is very good. The one thing I would just suggest now is that maybe you add just a single pole that you go over. Cavaletti work can be quite good with a horse like this, and you don't need to do multiple poles. It's too complicated on the end of a lunge line. Just a single pole is all you need, just to let them go over. It's good to have a guide pole if you do that, you know, so you have a little guide, so you know, send them down a chute, so to speak, that you can create with either one or two poles, just by having an L shape there, that you have a guide that guides the horse over the pole. And just that single pole, just getting them to lift up that little bit more that they have to do to step over that pole, is great exercise for this kind of horse. You know, back in my fox hunting days, you know, the old master fox hunter guys would say, oh, they got this horse stumbling around. You take them out in the corn rows and and make them go over the corn rows. They had to lift their feet up. Same kind of principle. They do learn to do that. And just a single pole on the ground is all you really need, just to get that little bit more flexion out of the hock. It works very well with these kind of big horses, and you can do that in the walk trot, and you can even do it at the canter once the horse gets used to it. But I would certainly get them well used to it at the walk and trot before you try doing it over in the canter, because they tend to want to jump a little bit. What we want them to do is just learn to come up in stride if we do it in the canter. But once again, this all looks really good. I like how you're just letting this horse develop over time. You know, I think she's moving pretty actively for this type of horse. Now, obviously, we have some work to do, you know, but she stretches down. Look how, the moments that she stretches down, look how much freer the back end looks for those moments. Right there, you see all of a sudden she starts picking them up and putting them down a little more. She doesn't look like so much like those back legs are stuck in mud. And that's what we want to see, and that's what stretching facilitates. You know, we want to find the position of the head and neck. That's all we're doing, that it allows the back end to move through freely and doesn't interfere. You know, and that becomes higher as the horse develops the top line. So once again, that was all good work. I'm happy with that. Once again, for this type of horse, that's quite a good active walk. Once again, just suggesting that you add the pole on there. Certainly is a beautiful day wherever you are there. It's a beautiful sky. And now you've added the side reins. That's good. And that's about the right length. That all looks good. It's not fixing her head in a position, but she's feeling it if she throws her head way up, and that's all you want the side reins to do. And the horse will have a tendency every time it throws up, it disciplines itself and it wants to go down and find the release from that, which it will do if we allow it. All that tight side reins ever do is shorten the horse's frame. So whenever you see people trying to set the head and neck with a pair of side reins, you know that they're riding the front end of the horse instead of the back end. They're trying to create an artificial frame by forcing the neck over. That's how horses end up getting broken in the third vertebrae, overflexed in the neck, and that's the hardest thing to undo later in training. So when we go out looking at horses, and sadly we see so many horses today that have already been, and young horses that are only 3 and 4 years old, that people have already tried to force into this ridiculous frame with their heads way up in the air, and of course all they can do is end up breaking them the third vertebrae, which is what they do by over-tightening the side reins. They keep the horse from, they'd only understand that the horse is going to look so much better if you let it actually work in its true stride rather than this, we see so many horses that are so out of rhythm, and that's why they can't get in a rhythm, because they can't work comfortably. So they're constantly, every time they see them, I see videos of young horses like this all the time, and the people are riding them around to ring in this really tight frame. They come to a corner, they look like they're going to fall over. So once again, that was good walk work that you did there. And for this, once again, for this type of a horse, this heavy of horse, this is a pretty good active trot. Now she needs to stretch a lot more, and she will as she goes on here, but at least you're getting a pretty active trot for her. And once again, she's never going to move like, some 17-hand warm blood that moves very lightly and springy off the ground. It's just not that kind of horse, but you can improve her. This is all good, and this is quite active. I love how you're lunging now. So much better. Good active trot. There, very nice. You're getting some good stretching moments. And you're doing just the right thing. Every time she comes up, you're sending her on, and that's all you need to do. She'll chill until she seeks that stretch again. And once again here, once you get her used to that, she can certainly use the single pole. Just a single pole to trot over the ground. That'll get her just lift those hocks up just a little bit more. Be a little more of a gymnastic exercise for her. But you're getting this really well. There, she starts to stretch into it. And once again, this is a big, heavy horse. You got to remember, these kind of horses, their weight pulls their bellies down, so almost like a pregnant mare does. I mean, most, you'll see a lot of mares that become very sway back. Well, that's because the weight of their own bellies pull them down if they're not they're not getting worked correctly or not getting enough exercise out in the fields. The backs just collapse. That's why it's very wrong for both mares and babies to grow up in very small pens, the way we sometimes see done here in California. We saw a big surge in breeding here in California back in the 80s, and it really seems to have died off. And I think that's because so few people have realized that you need pasture, you need big fields to raise horses in, not little tiny pens. They don't, their bones don't develop right. Nothing develops right. So when you do that. So once again, that's back to a pretty good walk there. You're having moments where she's just getting really right, and just the way you're approaching this is exactly right. It's just going to get better and better. Just keep rewarding her when she goes into that stretch like that. Doing just the right thing. Now, one thing you could do, you do have a pretty big ring there. You could move her around the ring a little more. That is, in a larger area sometimes if you like. In other words, I like to move them up and down my ring sometimes, like lunge there and just keep moving her up and down. Also save your ring a little bit too, so you're not always in the same place. But of course you're trying to do this video for me here today, so I understand why you're staying in the same place. But when you're working on your own, do move up and down the ring a little bit. That'll save your ring, and just keep the horse moving a little bit and into new spaces. There. And once again, you can see she's just struggling to find out how I can work and do this much work, which you're asking her to do, which is really good. Working a little harder, and she's finding the stretch, and that's exactly what you want her to do. The beauty of the stretch work is that we're putting the horse in a frame that allows it to do the work more comfortably. That's why they don't resist. When you see people fighting with horses, they're fighting because they're trying to force them into a frame that's totally uncomfortable for the horse. And the horse is trying to tell them, but, and they're egotists, they think they're right, and they just try to force the horse through a wall. But that's never how you end up with a willing participant, and as Bill Steincrash used to say about jumping, if you can't get them to like it, it's never going to be much fun for you or the horse, and I think that's very true. We need to get them to like it, and if we're trying to force them into a frame, they're never going to like it, but if we let them develop, they're quite happy to do the work. Most horses are quite well-meaning. I've only met a few in my life that I thought were actually not well-meaning, and they were horses that people had created the problems in them, and they had become so turned off and soured. But you can't blame the horses for that. They are whatever humans have made of them. I mean, some babies are more or less difficult, but very few of them, start out as bad characters any more than the next one. It's just that some of them get into the wrong hands. People try to force them. There are some horses that you can force and they give it up. But there are other horses, horses that are closer to the blood, that is hotter type horses, they just panic. That's why we see so few people riding thoroughbreds these days, because they can't ride them in this hard, heavy-handed style that seems to have become so popular, holding against the mouth of these horses and trying to force them into frames. You try to do that with a thoroughbred and they'll flip over on top of you, which is what we have seen so often in the past. And once again, it's sad because the thoroughbred horse is a wonderful horse, and it too many of them are ending up going to the dog food because people are just afraid of them. It's just because they have no education. They're wonderful horses. So once again, this is all really good what you're doing here. It's not consistent yet, but it will be if you keep doing it. You're getting into a really nice place there. Good. That looks good there. And once again, always reward her. In the beginning, we reward them as soon as they get it. Let them come back to a walk, and then we just gradually try to get them to maintain it for longer and longer once they get in the zone. And it's so wonderful to ride horses like that. Once they learn to get in the zone, you just get on and they're like butter. As long as you're asking them to do things that are within the scope of their abilities, you'll find that they just flow around the ring, and that's how riding should be. It should just flow forward. It shouldn't be all this stopping. It's like when you see jumper riders, the fast rider is always the one who looks like he's going the slowest but never changes his speed around the course. That's who wins. You see the person who's jerking the horse up in front of every fence and then rushing forward afterwards. It looks like they're going fast, but it turns out that they're usually losing a lot of time because they're always stopping before they have to jump, and that's that kind of jumping where the horse isn't working over its back, where they're trying to jack them back onto their hindquarters, and get them all excited to jump. The horse that's jumping over its back doesn't have to be excited. Just like when you saw that wonderful racehorse that sadly did not win the Triple Crown, but California Chrome, and I suggest everyone go, if you can see that on YouTube. I'm sure you can find that on there. If you watch that second race that the horse was in there, that it won, it was just beautiful to see the end as the two horses were running so beautifully over their backs, and you can see it in racehorses as well. So when you see the horses coming down the stretch and the ones that are starting to throw their heads up in the air, those are horses that have lost their backs. So once again, I suggest you go on and take a look at that video of that race with that California Chrome horse, and look how that horse stays absolutely in the same position as it's galloping. His head is never moving up and down. And once again, look at the horses that are further back in the pack, especially towards the end of the race, and you'll see the ones that are seeming to be throwing their head up with every stride. Those are the horses that have lost their backs. So once again, this work that we're doing here, as I said, my father told me when I was very young that all great horsemen know the same thing. And it's very true. And that thing is how to get a horse to work over its back and develop its top line. Then you can ride a horse that's calm and you can do all these athletic things with them. Because the problem is, when you get horses excited in work, they usually eventually make a mistake. I mean, every rider I've ever seen who was that kind of wild rider, where they're just really jacking the horses up to get over the fences, getting them all, whipped up and excited, and they're, throwing their heads in front of the fences. And sadly, many of those people get hurt, but unfortunately they go to horse shows, and then young people see them riding like that, and they don't see them get hurt, but they go out and try to do it themselves, and they get hurt. So, if you get your horses working over their backs, you will just live a lot longer. Once again, go back and watch some of the masters of the past, as I often suggest, Bill Steincrash being for one. You can find some great videos of him, and some of the other great jumping masters that we had in the past. Michael Matz, who's now a race trainer. His horses also run beautifully over their backs. So once again, this is even a better walk than we started with. She's getting more limber as we're going, and once again, it doesn't just stay there perfectly, but that's much better. Now you see how pendulous her belly is. Now in a little bit of time, you're going to start to see that pull up. And really with a horse like this, I don't even do any riding till I see that starting to happen, till I see the horse starting to pull up through its abdominal wall. Then that tells me the horse is ready to carry weight. So if we get on a horse that cannot pull up through the abdominal wall, there's no way it's going to get its back up underneath you. So those are some of the things that I look for there is that, looking for the horse to bring its belly up and just be able to keep this continuous swing. Once again, watch those racehorses. Watch California Chrome, in that middle race there, and see how beautifully it stays over its back throughout. So this lunging work has been all very good, and once again, for this type of horse, it's just come along beautifully. It's getting more consistent as you're going there, and that's what you have to do, is just take your time. A horse like this, they can be very frustrating because people want to get on them and have them move a bit more, and they can only do what they can do. These big heavy horses are bred from field working horses and carriage horses, and they weren't really designed to do dressage on. So we have to do a lot of dressage with them in order to help them get to where they can. And I've seen some who are absolutely fantastic and absolutely beautiful at this once they get over their top lines. They can move to the degree that they can. As this horse is showing me here, as she's gone, her trot has gotten better, her walk's gotten better, it's swinging more. I'm seeing more of her top line, and she's stretching more consistently. So that's a good thing. Once again, as I said earlier, I think you could add a pole, not every day, but maybe every other day, add a pole in there for her to go over doing this. That will help her start to pull that abdominal wall up a little bit more too, as she has to flex her hock a little more and work a little harder through the joints of the hind leg. And as long as she's stretching into the contact, that will help that happen. So once again, for this horse, that's a good walk. And the fact that she breaks into a trot doesn't worry me. That's what they all do. Remember, a horse would always rather give you a bad walk than a good trot. So if they keep offering that trot, instead of the walk, then I just go to the trot and push them a little harder than they want to go. But this is all looking pretty good. She's got better flexion here. Look how much better the stretch is. No, this is looking quite good. This is much improved over where we started. Really good now. Now for this horse, that's quite good. There. Now this is really quite wonderful. This is exactly what you're looking for here. Very good there. Really nice. And once again, I loved how you just took your time getting to here. And, this video is about 20 minutes long, and that's about right. You wouldn't want to go much over that with her. And what you'll find is that she'll just get fitter and fitter every day. Though, of course, once in a while we see a day where they come out, they may be overworked and they're too tired. So, bear that in mind too. Just like yourself, we can't work at our peak performance every day. So a horse like this, her peak performance is about what you just did. So, once again, we can't do everything we can do every day. So, don't be a little frustrated if you do a couple of hard days and she comes out and she's pretty pooped, because this kind of horse is going to, she needs to build some aerobic, fitness there is what we want, which is why we want to keep her swinging and active. These kind of heavy horses, it's important that we develop. With the hotter type of horses, Arabs, thoroughbreds, this kind of thing, we have to be very careful about how much we do, because they get fit too fast. And this kind of horse, you want to go slow with it. The walk is very important. You got to remember, these heavy horses were more built for walking than they were, anything else, in their origin. So, the walk is good for them. You could certainly lame up a horse like this by too much trot, too soon. But about what you've done is about perfect. And I'm loving that trot right there. Hugely improved. That looks really good. So what we'll look for then over the next few weeks is just looking for that belly to start pulling up. And actually, I do see a little bit there. That's the first time just coming around there I saw her begin to engage the abdominal wall there a little more. So that's what we're looking for. Certainly doing a good job with the equipment. She seems very patient about all that as you get things changed around. Now, the one thing I would say, what I do like people to do is keep that whip under your arm. You know, I know this horse is very calm and quiet, but you kind of turned your back on her, very close to her there. You know, with a fractious young horse, you can get yourself kicked in the spleen very easily doing that. So you want to keep that whip with you when you go up to the horse and just put it under your arm so you can keep it there. Just turn it backwards, so to speak, and put the handle under your arm so you never have to drop it. Because you never want to be leaning over, you know, when you're close to the horse the way you did to pick up that whip. Because once again, with a fractious youngster, they can decide to kick out or pull you right off of your feet. And believe me, I've seen it happen. I've seen people get tied up in the ropes and drug. You know, so be a little careful about that. And, you know, try not to be turning your back on the horse as you did there for just a moment. But other than that, your lunging has been quite good in this video. So just be a little more careful in your work around them. I always assume, no matter how much I know the horse, I always assume that something's going to go wrong. And I learned that at a very young age. And fortunately, I walked away from some pretty bad accidents when I was a young person. And I learned my lessons. And here we go back in the, there we go, back in that stretch. So again, a little stiffer on this side, perhaps. Yeah, like that. So I wouldn't expect the horse to bend too much. Remember, the bend, that is the overall length of bend, the overall length of the horse's body is dependent on the horse lifting its back. So you have to have longitudinal bend. That is, the horse must lift its back before you can get sideways bend, because that's what frees up the vertebrae and allows bend to happen. That's why we see so many upper level horses today that don't actually bend at all. They absolutely are straight. They have no bend in their bodies because they're, you know, locked back in a frame with their backs locked downwards. And they come to corners and it looks like they're going to fall over. And yet somehow they get 80% scores. Something we have to work on in the dressage world. Bringing the scores back into reality. That was a nice stretch you got there at the end of that. There, nice walk. It's only a few strides there. That's very good. I love that. Look at the length of the neck there. Now, if you could kept that and keep it going, it would have been good too. So that was absolutely a fantastic workout with this horse. Everything other, again, the only thing I didn't like was when you dropped the whip and turned your back on the horse when you were so close to it, changing directions there that one time. But other than that, you did a really good job. You were always moving the horse forward away from you. That was fantastic. And I think for this horse, that was about as active as I could expect her to be. You got her to a really good place. And, you know, I like the fact that you changed directions many times. That's good. And I like how you started without anything on at all and then went to the side reins. That's good. And just took your time with it. I think you could have ended there, but you're only going a few more strides here. And that's good. And there, that walk is better. There. And once again, I see a little bit better in the belly there than when we started. Certainly a little better. But once again, let that be your guide. You want to see her pull up through that abdominal wall before you think about getting back on and riding her again. If you do, then all of a sudden you're going to feel that the horse is transformed. She will have wings, so to speak, because she'll be able to push up underneath herself. But this is really good and a huge improvement. There you go. I like how you kept that whip with you there. All right, Will Faerber from Art to Ride. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much. Good work.